The NFL Hall of Fame. Every year players are voted in to join the ranks among the greats. This year, like most, we had some pretty sure locks in players like Ed Reed and Tony Gonzalez, with Champ Bailey basically being a lock as well. But every year there are some players that get snubbed and left out. Some who have been snubbed on more than one occasion. Maybe 2020 will be their year, but for now, let's take a look at two offensive players in particular that should have gotten the nod by now, but will spend another year on the outside looking in. Bruce, Edgerrin James, two Hall of Fame finalists who had their third year of making it to the final voting, but passed over again. Both of these guys seem like they have accomplished plenty to be inducted, but apparently not enough. So why are they considered snubs? Well, let's take a look. Bruce was a Hall of Fame finalist for the third consecutive year this year, and still no nod. I just don't understand. Bruce played 16 seasons in the NFL and totaled up a total of 1,024 receptions for a crazy 15,208 yards and 91 touchdowns. He had over 1,000 receiving yards in all 8 seasons for the Rams that he played all 16 games in, and at the time of his retirement, was second all-time in receiving yards to no other than the possible GOAT, Jerry Rice. Since then, he has been passed by Larry Fitzgerald, Terrell Owens, and Randy Moss. Speaking of Terrell Owens real quick, I just want everyone to, just know real quick that it's Terrell Owens and Terrell Davis. Alright, just so there's no more confusion on that. T.O. and Moss are already in the Hall now, and Larry's basically a lock. So I just don't get Bruce's case. Bruce went to 4 Pro Bowls and was a main part of the greatest show on turf, including his game-winning huge Super Bowl catch, adding his ring to his stacked resume. He was one of the top weapons on the greatest offense the NFL has ever seen, and still not enough respect. He has the stats and the big moments in his career to be in the Hall of Fame, but just can't seem to get past that final round of the voting. The knock on him is that he was never an all-pro first-team player and wasn't really ever considered the number 1 receiver in the league. But when you look at the team he was on and his overall career numbers, I just can't see how this guy's going to continue to get passed up on. Hopefully 2020 is his year and we can finally see him up on the podium getting his well-deserved recognition. Edgerrin James was also a finalist for the 3rd time this year, and he's still on the outside looking in as well. After a great 11-year career, James is statistically one of the greatest NFL running backs of all time. Over his 11-year career, he totaled over 12,000 rushing yards and 80 rushing touchdowns. He was selected to 4 Pro Bowls, and late in his career, reached the Super Bowl with the Arizona Cardinals, although they did end up losing that game to the Steelers. This guy was a beast straight out of the gate in the NFL, leading the league in rushing as a Colt in his first 2 seasons in the league. He rushed for over 1,000 yards 7 different times, and is number 13 all-time in rushing yards. Every eligible name ahead of him on that list are in the Hall of Fame. He also currently ranks number 13 all-time in career rushing yards per game at 82.7. An even crazier stat, Edgerrin James is one of only 4 players to ever rush for over 1,500 yards in 4 separate seasons. Oh, the other 3? Just Walter Payton, Eric Dickerson, and Barry Sanders. You could say James' numbers are easily up there with the all-time greats. So why isn't he a lock? Well, a knock for sure is that he does not have a championship under his belt, but neither does Barry Sanders or LT, and no one's going to question their greatness. Another possible reason could be that Peyton Manning effect. I mean, I don't really like this one, but some say that James had a huge benefit in playing alongside with Peyton Manning, and it was much easier for him to rush on a great passing team. We saw it take a few years for Marvin Harrison to get in, which was also unexpected, but I don't buy this argument, and I just feel like I have to just point out a couple others that they had great quarterbacks too, like Marshall Faulk, Emmitt Smith, and they had no problem getting into the Hall. At the end of the day, Edgerrin James was the best running back in the league his first 2 seasons, got hurt, and still managed to have a long, successful career afterwards. He should have been in by now in my books. Now on the bright side, There's still plenty of light for these two players. Since 1970, according to the Hall of Fame, over 89% of all finalists eventually get inducted. Never mind these guys being finalists 3 times. On top of that, with Randy Moss and T.O. recently being inducted, that clears up some space for other receivers to get in the future, as the position was a bit clogged with hopefuls for a while. Also, for Edgerrin James, with Adrian Peterson and Frank Gore looking like the only possible for sure future Hall of Famers in the NFL currently, and the NFL turning more pass heavy as of late, really helps James' case for making him stand out even more. At the end of the day, these guys are not the only ones who have gotten snubbed out of the Hall of Fame. Every year, people get passed on, and we just can't understand sometimes. The NFL Hall of Fame has become almost comical, as sometimes players getting passed over as a result from the whole first ballot Hall of Fame thing just being too important apparently to let these other guys in. And I just don't get how players can get passed on for years, and then one year they're just suddenly good enough. I don't know, like, if he's good enough to get in eventually, why not just put him in the first place? What's the delay? As fans, I mean, we have no say in the voting process, and all we can do is watch and hope to see the ones we want inducted. But at least for me, I really hope to see Isaac Bruce and Edgerrin James on that podium in 2020, and I know they feel the same way. Let me know who you guys have as your number 1 Hall of Fame snub of all time. And with that, that's all I got for you guys today. Peace.